I'm out here today with Bobby. Before I talk to Bobby, I'm gonna send a happy birthday to Nicole. Nicole is turning 12 years old today. She's all the way in Scotland. Her and her mom are big fans of the channel. So happy birthday, Nicole. So Bobby, how long have you been homeless? How long have you been using blues?
I've been homeless for about, let me see, we're in July, so January, February, March, May, June. I've been homeless for about 3 months, and I've been using for, I'd say, about a good 8.5, almost 9 months.
Okay. What year are we in?
We're in 2021.
Yep. And we're in September, okay?
Yeah.
So how did you get started with blues? What happened? How were you introduced?
I mean, it wasn't even necessarily me being introduced. It's just that I did my 4 years in prison, and before then I had been using heroin. I had used heroin since I was like maybe 15, 16 years old. And the 4 years that I did in prison, I was mostly clean, but there were times where I used, and you would think I've been using the whole time because that's how much I was doing at that time. But the majority of my time I was in prison, I was clean. So I felt like going through what I went through in there, which was just kind of constantly being badgered on a daily basis, to where even if I wasn't saying anything out loud, it's like I'm still having to be bothered by somebody telling me something, if that makes any sense. So it's like you never catch a break. You're just constantly being nagged, and freaking you can't ever, it's like I couldn't ever express myself. It didn't matter if I even did have the time to speak, or if I had the chance for someone to listen to me or acknowledge me. It felt like overall when I got out that I never had that opening to release those feelings and that tension. So I still had that, I wouldn't call it a monkey on my back or a chip on my shoulder, but I still had that like urge to use, like where I had it in the back of my mind, where if I saw an opportunity where I could do it, and pretty much, people would accept, and my all-around situation would basically, I guess, concur, where my situation would concur with it, that I would take that chance. So, I mean, it's not the best decision. I just felt like, it's like you're constantly being under attack. It's like a war is going on in your head, and when you don't have the chance to calm down, you don't know where it's coming from, because you're not aware of something that's right there in front of your face, And when you're going through things like that and it gets bad enough, you don't know if somebody else is in danger or not. Or it might not even be somebody that you know. It might not even be your family. It might not be your friend. Maybe it's just somebody that could be your age. It could be somebody you relate to. It could be somebody older or different, but for all you know, they could be in serious danger, And like, you're led to believe that because the crazy shit is pretty much going on in your head, I mean, you're hearing sirens in your head and you can't even tell the difference if they're real or not,
Bobby, what's the difference between, how would you compare the blues versus H?
Honestly, blues are a letdown compared to H. That's how I feel about it. But at the same time, they're also the only thing that, like, I would consider a fulfillment, so to speak. If I were to speak good on them, you would say a fulfillment compared to H, because they're the only thing that replaces that relief as much as the other stuff does. But the whole thing with fentanyl being in them, like, I mean, I've done multiple shots of heroin. It doesn't matter if it's in one day or day after another. The point is that I've done enough shots of heroin to where I know where it feels like to have a high dose, to where your body is being overpowered in pain, and you're cringing on the floor, and then as soon as you think that pain's gonna overwhelm you where you can't take it no more, your body's basically filled with instant relief, you know? That's considered one of the best feelings that you can get as a heroin user. That's also known as the devil's cringe, or the devil's itch if you get a different reaction, but similar, or the devil's itch. You got the devil's cringe, you got the devil's itch, and then you got the pins and needles. Those are the three ones that I know as far as getting a serious feeling from shooting up heroin. I've never had that reaction from using fentanyl yet, except for one time that I did it in prison, and somebody gave me some that they technically owed me, I guess you could say. And the first thing I did was went and got my needle and freaking dumped that spoon. I dumped the whole thing in the spoon, even though people were, telling me, oh, that looks like too much, you might overdose, you might die. And I'm just like, dude, like, you don't know what you're talking about. Like, I've done this before, like, I know what I can handle, And that was the only time where I had enough to where I could say where I actually did enough of it, I've never had that feeling off using pills since I've been out. So
What are your plans after being in prison? What goals do you have for yourself? Is this it? Is this the...
Hell no, this ain't even close. Man, I don't know how to say this, but freaking, I'm just gonna start it off like this. Anybody in America universally owns things. It doesn't matter, just like the way people out here in Phoenix say they own clothes. I mean, people are off the chain with... You can go to a store, buy something off a shelf, and walk by a Circle K, and somebody says, hey, that's my bandana, and even you explain to that person that you just bought that from the store, and they still tell you that's still... You know what I'm saying? It's like, for all you know, they could have gone to a Goodwill and donated it, you know what I'm saying, or sold it to Goodwill, or for whatever reason that item was still new and it went back to the store, right back on the shelf, I mean, if I can have people tell me that, and I can also have people, react to me when I say, yeah, I probably own at least a couple houses, or a couple small houses, or maybe a house the size of a condo, freaking people make it seem like they never had that cross their minds,
Right.
Anybody that has a family that owned any kind of business or something probably owns a house other than the one that they grew up in,
Yep.
So I'm looking at it like that, like I'm just gonna build off of my own things like that.
Got it. Hey, Bobby, what would you any type of advice for parents to be on the lookout if they see any changes in their children, behavior change?
My advice for parents would be to don't question things that are bad. Okay, so like, if I could word it right, like, especially mothers obviously, like, their natural instinct is to worry about their kids. So my advice for them would to be not to create the scenarios in their heads, because they're gonna worry either way, you know what I mean? So don't create a whole scenario while they're stressing out, that's one thing I could advise them with. And just like, I had something else to say, I forget what it was, but my other piece of advice would to be to pay attention to where your kid is going, not where he's being led. Don't use somebody, don't try to go find somebody as a role model, like, oh, my kid looked up to him for whatever reason. Wait till your kid goes on his own and makes his own decision, whether it's a small decision or a big decision, and let that decision, or whatever it is that kid's showing that he's going towards, let that lead you. Let that lead you to how you basically learn how to raise your kid. That's one way to learn how to do it. So that way things don't go wrong, they don't backfire, and they work out like they're supposed to.
Bobby, that's really good advice. So I'm gonna say thank you very much for talking and sharing your story. As I mentioned to you earlier, the purpose of this channel is to create prevention through awareness, helping educate youngsters to stay away from the dangers of drugs and being off the street. So thank you very much. Stay safe, and we'll talk soon, okay?
All right, thank you very much.